Okay. AJ
So,
Chan. What's
what's
up,
going
my
on?
man?
I'm fantastic, dude. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of this, man. I wanted to bring you on as the first guest when I heard you were interested in this because I heard a little bit about what you were doing right now, and you're really like at ground zero. I mean, the moment things happened in, Minneapolis, which sort of escalated to where we are right now, that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, you were there, and I think the perspective that you have right now is awesome, and it is why I was like, I really want to start the conversation with you because you're like the day one guy, and yeah, I would appreciate if you could speak on that a little bit. Talk to me about
1,000%.
what's going on there, real quick before we start. AJ Channer, singer of Fire from the Gods, very cool band. Should have introduced you more properly, but I'm just excited to talk to you because I want to hear all this. So, all right, well, catch me up. What's the story? What happened that got you there right away?
Okay, so the art upon seeing what happened to George Floyd, I thought, oh, here we go again. But it wasn't just here we go again because once it bubbled up, once the city started burning, I was like, wow, I think we're at a turning point because I believe people have generally just had enough. And it wasn't just black people, it wasn't just Americans. I mean, the whole world kind of activated. And so I saw it and just said, you know what? I can't sit here on the sidelines anymore. The message of Fire from the Gods has always been about social justice and the society's betterment, and not so much the political side of things. It's always been about the betterment of society. And so to see another citizen murdered by police, to see another black man murdered by police unjustly, to be completely honest, in my most humble opinion. So I said, I've got to get out there, and I went. Uh, the riots and the protests started on Thursday. I was there on Monday.
Crazy.
I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I just knew that someone had to document it because we are in such a polarized society, and everyone that's no secret. And the polar we get caught in between the government and the media. And it seems like the government are playing against the media and the media are playing against the government. And then we, the citizens, we just get caught in this whole little scramble of bullshit where we don't really understand and see what was going on. So I said, you know what, as a commentator, as someone who uses art to commentate on what's happening in my particular in society today, I've got to go out there and maybe give a very unbiased, objective view because that's what Fire from the Gods is about. That's what I've always been about. I've been about the unifying factor because we as a society, we as a global community, we have tried every other option in order to maintain control, in order to get a handle on society, in order to get some sort of peace, some sort of lasting peace. And the situation in Minnesota, it's very easy to say, well, there they go again. They're rioting, they're burning shit, they're tearing down their neighborhood. But no one really listens to the voices. Everyone gets so consumed in the what. We get consumed in the fact that this is what happened, and they're now burning down their buildings, they're now burning down their neighborhood. But no one talks about the why. So I wanted to go to Minnesota to get a why. I wanted to hear the voices of the people in the city specifically because I know that their voices amplified would be more of a voice of reason to why this is happening in the States, why this is continuously happening, what is wrong with policing in America, what's wrong with the racial inequality in America, where does over policing come from, why are people so policed, and just the why, because stressing the why, I believe that gives America and that gives society a better picture of what is specifically happening and why it's happening and why we can and how we can possibly get to a point where, in might not happen anymore, or we get to a point where there's a bit more understanding. And like you were saying before, for this situation to be rectified, yes, justice needs to be served. Yes, policy needs to be changed. But like you said, governments work slow. Governments, policy. It is very good that people have called this call to action has created some sort of the conversation. But the conversation needs to continue because the racial question here in the United States goes a little bit deeper than just the policing issue. Policing is one aspect of it. The socioeconomic hierarchy and pyramid that's been created that's tending and now trending to get further and further and further. There tends to be a huge distance in between the different social classes, and it's all creating this cauldron which is bubbling over, and there's a powder keg. I think we're at this point where we're about to explode, and just Minnesota, the reaction in all 50 states, I think that's the most emotional reaction the country's had in a long time to something like this. But it doesn't mean that it won't go away, because who knows? I mean, just last night in Atlanta, another gentleman was shot by police. Yeah, the facts are a little bit different of what occurred, but still.
I mean, it's happened several times this week already, sure. And
Right.
I think what I've noticed is every time this happens, it always starts peaceful. And then
Of course.
it gets a little more rowdy. People get a little more violent. People get a little more frustrated. And it's like, you've seen peaceful protests, like massive amounts of peaceful protests.
I was a part of a bunch of peaceful demonstrations, and nothing suggested that there was violence except for the damage that happened after. You see the damage. I mean, I saw the burnt out Minnesota 3rd Avenue, 3rd Precinct. I saw the Target. I saw the Arby's. I saw the pawn shop where the guy tried to defend himself and he shot someone and they burned the place to the ground. But the thing is, there are agitators, obviously. Like, okay, let me put it this way. There was a U.S. bank that's there on the corner of Lake where the Target is, where the Target that was looted and became the focal point of the situation. Right across the street from the 3rd Precinct. And there on the bank, it said things like "smash the state," "this is blood money." There were a lot of anarchist symbology on there. The thing is, if you're for that, I get it. And, at one point in my life, I was extremely anarchist. I was extremely left. I had these views where I was just like, just burn it all down. I was a young, frustrated kid that didn't want any more to do with the system, so to speak.
Sure. I think when you have that like moment and it all really sets in, your initial reaction is to say, yeah, burn it all down.
Yeah, of course, exactly. And that's what they were going through. But the thing is, what I observed and what I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm like, these brothers that are sitting there getting smashed by the cops, these brothers that are sitting here that are sick of the situation of the policing in Minnesota, they're not stopping to put an anarchy A on a bank. So you got to know that there's some sort of other agitator that's involved. And sometimes that happens, especially here in the States, because people know once you start throwing bricks, once you start throwing bottles, then you've heightened the police. Now you can shift the narrative. Now, I don't know if it's intentional. I know that some people want to piggyback and they want to say what they want to say and they want to get everyone else riled up. But the fact is this: you have a city that is overwhelmingly white. You have a very small community of Black and immigrant people that all live in two very separate areas and parts of the city. You have a police force that's about, I don't know the exact numbers, but what I was told multiple times was that the numbers were about 1,000 police officers. 50 of those police officers are Black. So you have a community that's policed by people that don't even understand them, that don't speak the same language as them. But we do all speak English, but the fact is there's a language of occupation, there's a language of aggression. And so this part of town was boiling, and it was bound to happen because apparently it happens every day. New York City, it happens every day, but New York City is such a big city and with such a homogenous community in New York that, you know, the policing kind of tends to differ from borough to borough.
Sure,
But
it's widely different if you go to different
exactly,
areas. Yeah.
exactly. But these cities, and you know, you always hear about LA, you always hear about Atlanta, you always hear about Chicago, you hear about New York. You don't think about these small Midwestern towns. You know, it's the very same thing. The flyover states. You know, we forget about these, but there are these communities of Black people that live there that have dealt with racial prejudice and over policing for years because the spirit of racism and the air of racism is so prevalent and so pervasive in these towns because they're so segregated. I mean, this town is just like Chicago, to be completely honest. Chicago is extremely segregated, but this place is segregated to the fact that there's still redlining in these towns. You know, the economic method of separating neighborhoods. So these are like warring factions, and the police versus the community is like a warring faction there. And the fact is this: I do believe in the system that we've created because the system built on the ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is not only is it great to believe in that, but it just gives you a sense of security that my life matters in the greater community, in the greater scheme of things. And my voice matters in the greater scheme of things because my humanity now has been taken into account. But obviously, we do not live by those rules. We don't live by those ideals. So this town, Minnesota and Minneapolis, these brothers, these sisters, this community, they do not believe in these ideals because all they have seen and all they've dealt with is this over-policing, this extremely aggressive police force that seems like the way that Minnesota, that precinct looked, it looked as if it was the fortress of an occupying force. It looked like a base that something in Iraq, you know, something out of, you know, I've been to the Middle East twice and I've seen, you know, I went to Israel in 2000 and that was a very tense time in Israel. And I saw what it was when the Palestinians were pushed into these areas and the Israelis were separated in these areas and there were this occupying force. There was this air. There wasn't a police force there. There was this militarized, extremely militarized entity that descended upon these people. And although that might not be the way it's pushed politically or on the national, on the international stage, but it's always seen as we are at war with each other. And that town, they were at war with each other. And from what the things that I can say, and I can tell these brothers, I can tell the young people there and say, listen, the system is built on these principles. And if we all were to live by these principles, we might just be better off and we might actually be able to move forward and work together. And they're just like, no, why do I have to validate my humanity? Why does a piece of paper, who said that, you know, why do I always have to go the extra mile to prove that I'm a good father, and I'm quoting someone that I interviewed there while I was speaking and multiple people. And the air now that has spread nationally, it just seems that the ideals to which this country was founded on, I think we all know, and I think it's more in our faces that we do not live up to our creed. As Dr. King said in his speech, we are not living up to who we say we are. And we are at a crossroads now in the United States where I firmly believe that if we do not start listening to the voices of the people that are feeling oppressed, that are experience oppression, there are very distinct narratives here in the United States, and the beauty of what's happened and the unfortunate byproduct of what's happened are that people are now waking up and saying that my narrative, my idea of the United States, my idea of freedom, my idea of my sense of being an American is now challenged because what I thought did not exist, which is this extreme racial prejudice that exists and so pervasive through every facet of American society, some people are now being confronted with that and it's uncomfortable. And they're like, what the hell's going on? And you can tell a kid like, dude, chill, just let's talk it out. Let's have this conversation. But sometimes it's easier to throw a brick through a fucking window than it is to sit back and actually take a breath and try and talk things out. So
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's hard to. It's very easy to judge somebody on a momentary reaction in an emotional moment.
exactly.
But if you're not that person and you haven't lived in this system your entire life, I don't really think you have the perspective to know, hey,
Exactly.
I don't know if that's right or wrong. Like, you don't know what he's capable of handling. Like, you push people to a point, there's going to be a breaking point, And
we are like that. I mean, everyone, and what the other blessing here is that the people that have experienced this and that have seen it and have dealt with this firsthand, have dealt with racial profiling, have dealt with what it feels. Some people, contrary to what some people may believe, we feel like our skin, our look, the way we talk, the way we live has been weaponized. And being a black person in America, our skin is weaponized. Our position in society has been weaponized. Everything about us seems to be a threat. And people have always seen us as a threat. And when you're constantly seen as a threat, if you're in the position of power, that threat doesn't really mean that much to you. So you can just ignore that threat and just say, well, I'll throw them a few bones. Well, the poverty gap. And, well, that's how they live. But unfortunately, we in America, we are a society of a vast people. We are different colors. We come from different places. We have different religions. But the fact is this, although those things might separate us, what unites us is a lot stronger. And what I believe unites us is a lot more promising to go forward with.
I do believe that. I want to believe that. I think a lot of people want to believe that. I can see the reaction from communities of people that have been more complacent, who are now like, maybe it takes a few extreme events to really put it in people's faces, but there is no escaping it now,
No, it's everywhere.
And I think, if anything, a lot of people who normally don't involve themselves in these conversations are now having them. And personally, I can speak on it. Like, I know several friends and band guys and family members who have all now taken a great interest in this. And it's a shame. It's a shame that things have to escalate to make certain people wake up, be a little more self-aware. But I do believe, on a positive note, I do see it. I see it more than I ever have. And part of the motivation to do this was because I want to keep that conversation going, and I want to see more people be proactive and support these movements and correct these errors in the system, So I do, I have a little bit of hope,
Yeah, but that hope, that spark in itself is what makes us such a great nation and what can make us a greater nation. So because we have that, and it's something that's embedded in all of us, despite the different needs of our communities, despite the different, our different backgrounds, it doesn't differ. We all want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And
I agree.
That in itself should be, okay, now I can have this sense of understanding. And touching on what you said as far as maintaining and continuing the conversation, is going to take situations like what we're doing now. It's going to take, I've always said it's not going to be a formula. There's not going to be a savior. No one's going to come and save us. No politician is going to get up on the podium and stand in front of that great seal and say, this is the way we're supposed to live now. It's going to take action from within ourselves. Each person is going to have to make a conscious decision to say, I am now going to be a lot more respectful of that person. I'm going to consider that person's humanity. And it doesn't take, well, what can I do for you? And how can I help you? It's very simple. You leave your house each day, you go with a sense and open-mindedness to be understanding and a willingness to learn. You know, the fact that we are on the verge of a true humanitarian crisis as far as the way we are policed here in the United States, the fact that someone can even stand up and say, well, actually, I have this to say, that means you are closing yourself off. That means you want to be combative about the idea, and no one's humanity coming into question, whether you're white, whether you're black, should ever be questioned or create a counter argument. We are humans, and we should not be at each other's throats.
I see a lot of all of this. I'm going to use my platform and I'm going to voice my opinion. I mean, I just did it. We're doing it together.
For sure.
I see a lot of it causing a lot of negativity. I see a lot of people who don't deserve to have a platform have one right now.
The detractors, for some reason.
Right. My question for you is, how do you navigate that stuff? What can we do to correct some of that stuff? I'm not saying, my opinion's right, but I know some other people's opinions are wrong, and you see a lot of stuff and you see a lot of hate. And it's like, when you see this kind of stuff, you're extremely vocal and outspoken on these issues. You're well educated. You've done the homework. You've done the work. Like, when you see this ignorant, short fuse response to a guy that has the same size platform as you, like, how do you get through that? Like, what keeps you in the right mindset to keep going, to keep, saying the things that are important? I think that's important for a lot of people to hear right now, because people get bullied into silence, and it's not the time for that.
I can tell you exactly what we're doing right now. The fact that, we come from a very similar scene, and you called and you started this, and I saw the traction for this for a few weeks, and I saw Joe Bad had posted it and stuff like that. The fact that we're doing this lets me know that I'm doing the right thing, and the fact that more people are willing to learn. So if someone wants to come up with their bullshit and someone wants to be like, well, so actually, this is what's really going on, I have to know that I have to zone them out. And because for so long, we as people have been silent, and we get silent because we think the voices are louder than on the other side, are louder than ours. But a collective coming together and saying that we will not take it anymore. And the fact is this: we are not here screaming to the high heavens that Black Lives Matter, or we want justice. What we're doing is just what humans and Americans need to do: have the conversation. And as long as the conversation stays in the mainstream, then whoever has to say whatever they want to say what you want to say. But at the end of the day, if more people are standing up each day and have a willingness to learn, and an open mind to learn, and an open mind to at least educate each other, then we're good. And most importantly, I believe education is so important. Education in America is failing at the moment, and not education so much in scholastic achievement, but education from the viewpoint of teaching the youth, teaching people to have pride in who they are and have a love for themselves. Because once you love yourself and understand your position in this community and in this world, then you can understand and love and have the same respect for someone else. And there is a self-hate that's going on, a self-prejudice that's going on in this country, and it's because of the societal pressures that we put on each other. This idea that we have to be something that we're not, this idea that we are something that we're not, or this idea that we're inferior because we don't live up to those standards. And the only standard that we need to live up to, and the only standard that we need to project on our children and the youth, are that you are who you are, and that is it. And you don't have to be someone else. You don't have to be anything else. You have to just live in your world, live in your idea, and grow within your development. And don't listen to the bullshit.
You're a beautiful person, AJ.
I'm trying, brother. I'm trying.
I love it, man. I wish I could sit here and talk to you all day. I know I have to keep this moving a little bit.
Get the other brothers on, man. I'm very excited that Jay and these guys are getting, because we as a scene you know, we've had things that have brought us together. We've had Warped Tours. We've had the Ozfest. We used to have things that define who we were as metalheads and stuff like that. And it seems like we don't have that so much anymore, that identity. But the fact that we can all get together in this room and have this conversation, it speaks so much more to who we are as musicians, to who we are as frontmen, as guitar player, whatever it is. It speaks to the fact that we are a strong community, a diverse community, and we can be a voice that joins the conversation, that makes a difference.
I couldn't agree with you more. I look forward to everything you're doing, man. I can't wait to see what some of this video stuff looks like. And
yeah, man, it's powerful, bro.
Excited for the band. I'm sure you got plenty to talk about for that next record. So I look forward to hearing that. But AJ, thank you so much, man.
Well, thank you, brother.
AJ Channer, Fire from the Gods. I appreciate it, man.
See you, my
Have a good one.
Nice one.
All right. That was AJ Channer, Fire from the Gods. Incredible human. I'm going to take a 2-minute break. I'm going to go grab Jay from Unity, and we will be right back.